Bill Self's latest health scare certainly has, I'm sure, Travis Goff thinking, do I have that succession plan ready? So we're going to break down what should that succession plan look like, who's a short list of candidates if this were to be Bill Self's final season at Kansas.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here at D Johnson Radio on Twitter, and this is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. Thank you to the everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. Thank you to the everydayers who stop by. If you see me out and about in public, and let me know, shout out Pete, and listen to the show. We really do appreciate it from our end of things, because this would be nothing without you guys. Anyway, on today's edition of the show, anywhere you get your podcast or on our YouTube page, we're going to be talking post-succession plan, or I guess for Bill Self whenever his career is over. And, specifically, we're going to talk about what if this is Bill Self's final season. Maybe it's not. Maybe the health will be great, and maybe Bill Self will be able to coach another 7 seasons, and Kansas will win a couple more national titles for him. That would be great, right? But what if it is? What would be that succession plan? Who are a short list of candidates for Travis Goff to have right now? Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Okay, so we're going to start off with some of our top candidates. We'll get into some of the internal hire possibilities, our kind of dark horse second-tier candidates. We'll get to all that. I'm going to start this off by saying, again, obviously, you hope that this is not Bill Self's final season, and the reason you hope that's not the case is because Bill Self is literally the greatest coach in KU basketball history. And yes, I say that knowing the history, knowing Roy Williams, knowing Fog Allen, knowing what some of these coaches accomplished. Bill Self is the best coach in KU basketball history. And so from that standpoint, yes, I want Bill Self to be coaching longer. From the health standpoint, if he's coaching longer, that probably means his health is good to go. And also, you look at the health situation that just happened, it obviously is a scary thing anytime you're dealing with a heart, but it also is I don't want to say routine situation to get stints in, but it's not the same as, I don't want to compare medical procedures, but it's not the same as some other things, right? To where there are people, I'm sure, who get stents done in their heart and then they are able to work for another 5-10 years. They're able to, have a relatively normal life after that, right? So there is no guarantee that this has some sort of impact. But there was already, talking people saying, okay, would this be Bill Self's last season in Kansas? He just wants to coach Darren Peterson, then he's going to be done. Then the health thing happens. It's at least important to have the discussion. Is this going to be Bill Self's last season? And if it is, are you prepared? Do you have a short list ready in case that does happen? And again, in the situation where he ends up coaching 5 more seasons, then great. But it's good to at least have that plan in place should something like that happen. And I did a show earlier this offseason talking about the top coaching candidates that I would kind of have for a post-Bill Self world. I think it's a slightly different conversation. Thank you to Everdares if you already caught that one. But I do think it's a slightly different conversation. Should it be the final season of Bill Self versus just having that short list of candidates ready? Because the short list of candidates, having them ready for any point in time is different than saying this would possibly be something that we need for next year. The coaching candidates are different. There's a certain level of you can project out, for instance, we're going to talk about this guy later in the show, but Ben McCollum, who's just the head coach of Northwest Missouri State, then Drake, now he's the head coach at Iowa. That's a little tougher to maybe hire that guy unless he knocks it out of the park in his first and what would then at that point be his only year at Iowa, as opposed to if you're doing okay, we don't know. Bill Self could retire in 5 years. Ben McCollum could have 5 years to, show what he can do at Iowa versus saying, okay, maybe it's just 1 year. So it's a little bit of a different situation. With that said, as we go over these coaches, probably the oldest I would want from a new coach would be mid-50s. And that might be stressing it. Ideally, you want somebody in the 40s or something like that. But if it's a really good coach, early 50s, mid-50s, you can work with that because then you at least figure, okay, that could be 10 to 15 years if you retire when you're 60, when you're 65. And, some guys are going to do it till they're 70. I do care about style of play. I know Tony Bennett's no longer a thing in college basketball, but I wouldn't have wanted Tony Bennett because the style of play would have been kind of boring. Basketball is entertainment at a certain point in time. So can you be a fun style of play and winning basketball games? Obviously people care about winning the most, but yeah, it'd be nice for it to be, a fun style of play as well. And so knowing all that, my top tier of realistic hires, right? If we want to say unrealistic names, sure, I'll throw Brad Stevens out there. How much money can you raise for Brad Stevens to come back to the college game? But we're talking realistic hires. In realistic hires, my top tier, I have 4 guys in this tier. No specific order on these guys, but Nate Oats is one of them. He's 50 years old. He's gotten Alabama to the second weekend 4 times, including 2 Elite Eights and a Final Four. So you're talking he has some deep tournament runs, which that's not a requirement for me. I would like my guy to have some deep tournament runs in there. But like Bill Self, for instance, yeah, he had some deep tournament runs. He took Tulsa to the Elite Eight. Like Illinois had some second weekends in there with Bill Self. But he didn't have the Final Four yet. So I guess the Final Four part is probably not the requirement. I'd like him at least to, have some second weekends under their belt. That's for sure. And Nate Oats does have that. He also has 3 top 10 KenPom finishes, and KenPom dates back to 1997. They have 0 from 1997 until Nate Oats. They have 0 KenPom top 10 finishes. They have 3 with Nate Oats. And that's important to look at too. Like, have you raised the level of the program? Maybe there's a guy who, I don't know who the example of this would be off the top of my head, but like somebody who's been in a program who's done well, but like the program's always done well. It's another thing when you've done that and raised the level of the program. And then going back to the style of play, we know Alabama, fun style of play, top 15 in tempo. They play fast. They're going to shoot a lot of threes. It's a modern style of basketball. He's an analytics guy. So yeah, Nate Oats would be a good hire. The one thing kind of going against him would be all the kind of off the court stuff that was happening in really the Brandon Miller days, but feels like we're starting to move past that and get further away from it. And it feels like that hasn't been something where, like, it's not like with Georgia football where it's like every year there's a new guy getting pulled over for speeding. In fact, it was a one-off thing. Bad, very bad what happened. But like, I think that'll be stomachable, so to speak. That's not a word, but we're going to make it one for people. Tommy Lloyd, he's also 50 years old. And this is one that I get a little more pushback than when I bring up Oats. I still think people think Tommy Lloyd is a good coach, but like, I think there's a little more pushback. He's been a top 4 seed every year in the NCAA tournament. That was something that Bill Self did until this last year. He's yet to have that like really deep run that we talked about, like doesn't have the Final Four, but he does have 3 Sweet 16. So he's consistently making it to the second weekend. He just hasn't cracked through. And I would like to think that the NCAA tournament, as kind of odd and random as it can be, like, you keep getting to Sweet 16s, eventually you're going to break through and make that Final Four run. And it kind of does remind me a little bit there of Self not having a Final Four till that 08 season that he finally broke through. But Tommy Lloyd has consistently had good teams at Arizona. He has been top 50 in tempo every year, so they're consistently playing fast. And they've been top 11 on offense every season, all 4 of his seasons as a head coach. So they're entertaining. They play good offense. They play a lot of like, it's a little bit of Roy Williams basketball where you're going to have big men really running the floor well. And I think Tommy Lloyd is known as being a really nice guy, being a really good dude. He's also really good with international recruiting, which I think in this new age that we're seeing in college basketball is going to be very important. So I'm certainly a big Tommy Lloyd guy. Todd Golden. Now, does this one, because he just won a national title at Florida, does this one move to the unrealistic category? Where it's like he doesn't want to leave now because he has shown, okay, I can win the title. The way I always view it is like Chris Beard left Texas Tech for Texas. That was after he went to a national title game. And you're sitting there going, well, why would you leave for Texas? You just showed you can go to a national title game at Texas Tech. The idea to me isn't the ceiling. That's not why you leave the program, right? If you're already at a power school, you don't leave to another power school for the ceiling. You can win a title, I think, at pretty much any power school if you have the right mix and stuff. The difference is the floor. Right? Year in and year out, it's easier to have an elite team at Kansas or at Texas than it is year in and year out at Texas Tech, for instance, right? But the ceiling season at Texas Tech can be just as good as any of those other schools. So you leave for the floor. So maybe that's what Todd Golden could see, right? But he's only 40 years old. San Francisco only has 1 NCAA tournament since 1999. It was under Golden. So it's not just this one season. Now, you do want to see another year of like good stuff. Like if Florida goes out this year and gets a 6 seed, and you'd be sitting there going, okay, listen, he had the unbelievable team. They won the title run, but it also took some weird things happening, and he hasn't had another team be a top 5 seed. That might start to make you question, is he on the same tier as Oats and Lloyd in this conversation? And the next guy we're going to get to, even though he would have the title, that would be an interesting discussion. But right now, he's definitely in that top tier and a younger guy. Also, the off the court kind of stuff with kind of some weird stuff going on, but it was dismissed, cleared away. So I don't know. And then Matt Painter, who is 54 years old. This one might get a little bit of pushback because I think people certainly think of Purdue as underperforming consistently in the NCAA tournament. But think about this now. So Matt Painter, 54 years old, also a little bit older than some of those guys. So that would be a knock against him. And honestly, I was prepared to have Matt Painter in tier 2. And then I started going over the resume when I was doing research for this show. And I bumped him to tier 1 because here's why. 9 straight NCAA tournaments with a top 5 seed. I mean, we love the consistency with Bill Self doing that. Do we realize Matt Painter has had 9 straight tournaments with a top 5 seed in the NCAA tournament? He's done it 12 times now overall at Purdue, and he's had 6 times with a top 3 seed. And now the big question of, okay, he didn't have those deep runs at Purdue. Think about dating back really to 2019. He has the Elite 8 where honestly they probably should have beat Virginia, and then you're at least in the Final Four, if not. I mean, who knows? Maybe you could win it all that year with as hot as Carson Edwards was. So you have the deep run with the Elite 8 there that you lose to the title winner. You have the 2024 national runner-up season where if you don't have an all-time great team like that UConn team was, there's probably a good chance that Zach Edey and Purdue are cutting down the nets and he would have a national title. And then last year even, you make it to the Sweet 16 and you almost upset Purdue in the Sweet 16, right? And since 2018 too, if we're talking about style of play, and by the way, he's had 6 other trips to the Sweet 16, but since 2018, 6 top 15 offenses. And he typically runs one of the smoothest offenses in the country, and he's used to being in the Midwest. I think Matt Painter would be a great hire for KU. So those are my tier 1 guys. We still got to get to tier 2 and talk about the internal hire stuff. Obviously, Jacque Vaughn would have a possibility, but Bill Self actually gave some comments about this of if Kansas should hire in the family, so to speak, on a recent podcast. So we're going to discuss that coming up next. This is Locked On Jayhawks. And today's episode of LOJ is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy, baby. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need that little extra boost to stay sharp and to stay energized, right? I know specifically for me, I go golfing a lot in the morning. I mean, that's probably true for a lot of people, right? With as hot as it gets here, although this past weekend was beautiful. And so if you're getting up early to go golf, you might be dragging over that back 9, right? And golf's all about the good times with good people. Don't let being tired ruin it. And good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime is going to cover that part. It gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the bev cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your order. This offer is valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get your energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5 Hour Energy shots today. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Don't forget you can check out Locked On College Football or Locked On College Basketball for your second listen every day. All right. The next part of this is the possible internal hire, right? Jock Vaughn is the guy who's on staff. Like, that's obviously the interesting one here. But Bill Self was actually asked about this, and this is how I feel about it. So I'm glad Bill Self said it because it pretty much sums up how I feel about this. So he was on a recent podcast with John Rothstein. And the question that John Rothstein asked directly, he said, whenever you're done coaching, is it important for you that your successor has ties to Kansas? Bill Self sat there and thought about it for a little bit. And then he said the quote, I hope we hire the best guy that gives Kansas the best chance to have the best basketball future moving forward. Would I love for that guy to be one of my guys? Absolutely. Or have ties to Kansas? Absolutely. In a perfect world, yes. At the end of the day, if that guy has ties, fantastic. If that guy doesn't have ties, get the best guy that can hopefully take this program even to another level. And he also later said in that same, response answer, the reality of it is you don't do that at the expense of taking a step backwards. So it's pretty much the same thought process I have. Again, if the guy ends up, if the best candidate happens to be a Kansas Jayhawk or, some sort of coaching tie with Bill Self, awesome. Then it worked out just great. But it doesn't have to be. If the best candidate has no Kansas ties, hey, guess what? Bill Self didn't have Kansas ties. Okay, I guess he did GA one season, Bill Self didn't really have Kansas ties, right? That worked out okay. Roy Williams didn't really have Kansas ties. That worked out okay, right? Now, one of the other interesting parts of that response, he said, right now, I think I've got a guy or two on my staff that would be fantastic, but timing is everything. A couple of reasons of looking at that. The timing is everything. What does that mean? Does that indicate, is that indicative of this could be Bill Self, from his perspective, his last season, and he's going, I don't know if the timing's going to work in Jock's favor. Because if I was going to be the head coach for the next 3 to 4 years and Jock would have, multiple years to really get in the swing of things, timing would have been great for him. But he's going, hey, if this is going to be my last year, is Jacque Vaughn really going to have enough time to soak everything in 1 year to be the maximum, candidate possible? I don't know. But also him saying, a guy or two on the staff that would be fantastic. Now, is that just Bill Self covering his bases to, make the staff happy to be like, yeah, I have one guy on my staff who makes sense. And then everybody's like automatically, oh, okay, he's talking Jock Vaughn. And then if you're one of the other coaches, you're like, do you not think highly of me? Because you're like, that's the obvious candidate. So maybe you say two guys just to make people happy. Or is it because he thinks that a guy like Curtis Townsend, or I think the guy that makes sense here is Chase Buford. Does he think a guy like Chase Buford has the coaching chops to do it? Maybe he does. And maybe that would be a real candidate for KU beyond Jock Vaughn if you're looking internally for the guys, right now. And so, if they do all the interviews and part of what makes it hard with Jock Vaughn, it's easy for me to look at Nate Oats or Tommy Lloyd or Pat Painter and be like, hey, they just did this season. They went 28-7. They had the number 8 offense in the country, or they have 10 straight NCAA tournament, whatever, second round appearance, whatever. It's easy to look at a resume. You can't really do that with Jock Vaughn. Yes, you can look at his resume from the NBA. It's not the best resume, but it's the NBA. The fact that you even have a head coaching job in the NBA, there's only 30 of those jobs, which is the best basketball teams in the world. And also in the NBA, your success and failure, yes, there's certain, the elite of the elite coaches in the NBA, like your Eric Spoelstra's, sure, they lift the floor, but they still have Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler half the time. Greg Popovich, one of the greatest NBA coaches of all time, they didn't have the talent, before Victor Wembanyama came in for a couple years. And they were one of the worst teams in the NBA. So very much in the NBA, your success and failure is going to ride on what star players do you have? What does your roster look like? So it's hard to even look at that. And then beyond that, it's hard to say, okay, I know Nate Oats did this season, or I know he brought in this transfer and he helped him have success because of his system or whatever. Again, it's hard to be we don't get to see behind closed doors. How is Jock Vaughn impacting practice? How do the players, how do the other coaches feel like he's impacting practice and impacting scouting reports and impacting recruiting? And that's something that Travis Goff and the other coaches will have a better idea, and the players, than we do. So it's from that standpoint, I would be willing to trust if that's how Travis Goff felt, and Travis Goff has done so well hiring coaches, though I do find it interesting, Travis Goff, all of the coaching hires he's made have been sitting coaches at other schools. He likes guys with head coaching experience. But I do find it at least interesting that and maybe that would be even more trust. If Travis Goff hired Jock Vaughn to be the head coach, maybe that's even more trust that hey, he bucked the trend to hire this guy and he gets to see behind closed doors better than we do about all those things he's doing well. So from that standpoint, I've always said, to me, it would be a B hire. My A hires would be those guys in tier 1. A B hire is still passing grade. A B hire, you still get a 3.0 GPA. That's going to make it work out for you, right? And it could still work. I just don't think it would be the sexiest hire in the world. So it is something that I acknowledge there would be a lack of, I guess, knowledge on our end of things, but that would kind of be the one. Now, maybe if Bill Self were to be another 7 years, if Brett Ballard pulled a Ben McCollum or an Aaron Miles got into college coaching or something. But I think right now, the only guy that I'm really looking at as a logical candidate with Kansas ties would be Jock Vaughn to be the head coach. And I'm not ruling it out at all. I definitely think it's possible. I've always heard that the athletic department really liked Jock Vaughn. I also randomly would hear Buzz Williams for the future after Bill Self, but I definitely think it's something that would make sense. I just, again, to me, tier 1 is the guys I want to go to the most. I get the Jock Vaughn thing, and I'd be cool with Jock Vaughn being the head coach, but I definitely think it's something to watch, and the timing is everything part. Again, kind of, I don't know, make your own decision on what that means from Bill Self. All right, let's finish up here. Dark horse and next tier of candidates. This is probably where I would have Jock Vaughn in that next tier as well. But who are some other guys outside of the program for KU? This episode of the show is brought to you by Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever for concert or sports tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. And that is where Game Time comes into play. Game Time makes getting concert, sports, comedy, whatever tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime. And you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Ever wonder what your seat view will actually look like before you buy it? Well, the app shows you a panoramic seat view, so there's no surprises. And, you can find any sport that you could possibly want on there. But you can even find the college football season on there as well. So KU football, less than 3 weeks now away from the Fresno State game. Find those over at Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. And don't forget, you can make Locked On College Football or Locked On College Basketball your second listen every day. All right. Who's my dark horse next tier of candidates, whatever you want to call it? So I have my top guys. I'd have, I guess it wouldn't be a dark horse, but he would be in the next tier of candidates here with Jock Vaughn, now that he's the assistant coach at Kansas. But again, the candidacy can either move up or down based on how he performs. It's just not something we're going to see as visually. Okay, Dusty May is in this one. And I think you could make an argument Dusty May should be in tier 1. But here's why I have him in tier 2. So he's 48 years old, really strong last 3 seasons. Final 4, Sweet 16, 3 NCAA tournament appearances. But still at the end of the day, he has had 0 Ken Pom top 15 finishes in 7 seasons as a head coach. And so he's a good coach. He's adjusted to his personnel. That's great. He'll play to a medium to faster pace. So those are all good things. I just think it's a slight tier below, where those tier 1 guys are. He'd be a really good hire for KU, but I still think there's more to be proven, so to speak, for May at this point in time. Grant McCasland would be in this tier. And again, I thought about actually making McCasland. Honestly, for this tier, McCasland might be my favorite, but I thought about making him tier 1. He's 48 years old. He obviously has done well at Texas Tech so far. And prior to that, he killed it at North Texas, which is not an easy place to win. But he's been a head coach for 9 seasons between Texas Tech, North Texas, Arkansas State. He's never had a losing season. He's won 20 or more games for 8 of the seasons. His only season where he didn't win 20 or more games. And again, that's a lot of years at schools that are not easy to win at with North Texas and Arkansas State. His one season, his low season was 18-10, and not the fastest style of play. That's one thing, but it is still fun. They're one of those teams where they play a little slower, but in North Texas, he played very slow. Texas Tech, it's slow, but not slowest. But it's an open style of play. It's a modern style of basketball, just at a little slower pace. And that I can deal with. What's cool about McCasland, though, is, and I guess this applies to, again, Dusty May as well, he adjusts to his personnel. He'll play even slower if he needs to. He'll play more of a guards game. When he was at North Texas, it was all about the guards. You think of like Tyler Perry. When you think of Texas Tech, you think of these past couple of years, really moving the offense to Darian Williams at the 4 and kind of building around that with him as a matchup nightmare. And I think that's super important in today's day and age. And again, that applies to Dusty May with the transfer portal, that it really does become about, okay, let's just get the best. I know we talked about the opposite of this for the KU basketball offseason, that it became about, okay, get the best fits for your system. But I think that's true because Bill Self's been the head coach for so long that you want to apply to that. I think the best coaches moving forward, outside of your guys who have established that level that Bill Self has, are going to be guys that can just do it the opposite way. They say, hey, we're going to get the best talent possible, and we're going to adjust our roster to fit that talent, as opposed to we're going to bring in, and it's a little bit of give and take here and there. And I think he does a good job of that. The other guy here I have is TJ Otzelberger, who's 47 years old. He has 2 Sweet 16s, 2 top 11 Ken Pom seasons in 4 years at Iowa State. He also went to the NCAA tournament twice in 3 years at South Dakota State. So that shows it's not just, one school specifically. I think compared to those other 2 guys, style of play, probably a little bit of a hit against Otzelberger. He's always had really good defenses. He always has teams who play hard. Those are fun. He's only had 1 ever top 30 offense. It was this past season. They were actually trending to be much better until some injuries. They finished 19th. So less of an offensive hire, but it's also a question of what's the ceiling here based on kind of the style of play that he's produced, but I think deserves to be in that tier of candidates as well. Now I have another tier here, which is a has to have a great season tier. And if they have a great season, they can go in either tier 1 or tier 2, depending just how great of a season they have. First is somebody I talked about earlier, Ben McCollum, right? If he goes to Iowa this year and they make the NIT, it's like, okay, well, you're still on the radar. But if Bill Self retires after this one season, you ain't hiring Ben McCollum after a season of Iowa where he goes to the NIT or a season where he gets in the play-in game of the NCAA tournament. But if Ben McCollum goes to Iowa in year 1 and they get like a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament and they make it to the Sweet 16 a year after he was at Drake and did wonders there, and after he was at Northwest Missouri State where he's winning all the titles, he becomes a real candidate at that point in time, right? Kevin Young, would he even leave? I think BYU is his alma mater, but like made the Sweet 16 year 1 at BYU. What if he does really well this year, which they're going to be expected to do with all the talent they have? And would he even want to leave? Again, though, not just the BYU thing of it being, I believe, his alma mater, but also the standpoint of like BYU might be as loaded as any college basketball team in the country with the money and funds they have. So I don't even know if he would leave, but if he has another good season, maybe he becomes a candidate and plays a fun style play. And then the last one here if they have a great season, he becomes a candidate if Bill Self were to retire after this year, is Pat Kelsey at Louisville, right? So you go from having a lot of success at Charleston, and then you go to Louisville last year, get an 8 seed, you lose in the first round, but it's your first year of what was a pretty big rebuilding project in college basketball. He would need an excellent season. But if Louisville, which I think they're going to have one of the best backcourts in the country this year, Louisville gets like a 2 or 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, you make a Sweet 16 or an Elite 8 or something, all of a sudden, boom, you become a much more real candidate. And again, these are all based on the idea, if this were to be Bill Self's last season, kind of how would the coaching candidates look at that point in time? So those are the obvious ones. I do, like I said, I've said this before too, I've kind of heard some things that Bill Self would love Chris Beard to be the successor, the guy after him at Kansas. You can put Chris Beard where you want to put him. I don't want to put him anywhere near the Kansas Athletics Department, so I'm not going to have him on this list. All right, that'll do it for this bonus or this episode. I don't know why I keep saying bonus. Just a normal episode of Locked On Jayhawks, but we had a lot of fun, and thanks for joining us on today's episode of the show. We'll see you next time for another edition of Locked On Jayhawks. We'll be coming at you, talking a little underrated players to watch on the KU football team coming up in 2025. See you on that episode right here with LOJ.